we have all these different tissues that make up our body. We have skin for barrier, we have skeleton, we have bones for structure, we have muscle to move that structure around, we have blood to transport oxygen, all these necessary tissues. Adipose tissue or fat tissue is one of those things. Now, what is fat tissue? Well, it serves a few purposes, but one of the main purposes is it is reserve energy fuel. Okay, now the fuel that you and I use to get through our day generally is in the form of glucose or sugar. It's stored in our liver, it's stored in our muscles. And as we go through our day, moving around, we deplete these energy stores. Once it's completely depleted, what your body then has to do is shift over into lipid metabolism. You've got the reserve fuel tanks and those lipid stores that you're going to use for your everyday energy. That's kind of the idea behind the keto diet, right? If you're not eating any carbohydrates or any sugars, then your body has to be in lipid metabolism all the time, and you're burning off those stores. So that's kind of the idea behind that. So why are we constructed that way? Well, if you look at the timeline of human history, we as humans have been walking around the earth, depending where you read, around 10,000 years. For most of that timeline, we were wild animals. We didn't have any concept of why we needed to eat and why we needed to drink and why we needed to sleep and why we needed to procreate, all these kind of things. So we had to develop internally hormones that would elevate at certain times to make us uncomfortable, to compel us to want to do these things. And we've all experienced this before. It's been a long time since our last meal. We start getting uncomfortable because our hunger hormones are increased, and we know if I just go eat something, I'm going to feel better again. So for thousands of years, that's how we were kept alive. You think about an early person who's going throughout his day. It's been a day since his last meal. He's depleted all the glycogen or the glucose stores in his body, and now he's flipped over to fat metabolism. He's starting to burn into the little bit of fat that he has stored there. His brain, wanting to keep him alive, will recognize that and do two things. Number one, it would slow his metabolism to conserve energy. And number two, it would increase his hunger hormone level to compel that person to want to go out and eat something, and they could start all over again. And that's just how we as humans were kept alive for thousands of years. That's how wild animals are kept alive. You don't see obesity in wild animals because they just eat in order to feel comfortable again when their hunger hormones go up. So now let's fast forward. It's now 2020. We have, at least around our country, ready access to very calorie dense food and drinks and so forth. We have perfect understanding of why we eat and why we drink and why we sleep. But with this radically changed environment around us, we are able to add a lot of fat tissue very rapidly. Our brains have not had time to evolve much beyond what we were thousands of years ago. Our brains still see the addition of fat tissue as protective. The more fat tissue you can add, the longer you could survive in a famine. So your brain will readily allow you to continue to gain and add on weight. Here's the bad part about that. Every time you gain weight, that gets re-registered in your brain as your new normal amount, right? So if I gained 10 pounds last year, my brain now thinks that extra 10 pounds is where it needs to hold me. If I gain 5 more pounds this year, my brain is going to think this is where I need to be. So I decide, I wake up one day and I need to lose some weight. My blood pressure is going up, my blood sugar is going up. I know I'm not getting healthier. I need to lose some weight to get healthy. So what am I going to do? I'm going to pick out, doesn't matter, XYZ diet. I'm going to go on these diet pills. I'm going to do whatever the traditional modes of weight loss are. What will happen? Well, the first few weeks into that diet, I'm doing pretty good. I'm feeling pretty good about it. I'm seeing that scale move. I'm seeing the numbers come down. Then what inevitably happens? It stalls, right? That weight loss stops. Not only does that happen, now all of a sudden I'm really hungry. I go to sleep hungry. I wake up hungry. I finish a meal and I feel like I could eat all over again. Well, what's happened? It's the same thing that happened to the guy 10,000 years ago. I've lost some weight. My brain has then kicked into this starvation mode. It has slowed my metabolism. That's the point at which the scale stops moving. It doesn't want me to burn off any more fat. At the same time, my brain has increased my hunger hormone level, and that elevated hunger hormone level is going to remain until I'm able to put all that weight back on. There's even evidence to show that every time we do this, every time we yo-yo, our brain's going to reset our baseline weight a little bit higher to protect us from the next famine. So we're actually making ourselves bigger by yo-yoing all these years. So the bottom line is, if this has been your experience, this is not just because there's something wrong with you, that you don't have the right willpower or this or that. It's exactly how your body is supposed to work. The analogy would be if you have a normal hemoglobin or red blood cell level. You go donate blood today, we're going to drop that level. And after I recheck in a few weeks, you're going to be right back up where you started. There's nothing that you did or didn't do to cause or prevent that. That's just the way your body works. With bariatric surgery, for some reason, and I'll be the first to admit, we're not quite sure what this mechanism is. When you have an operation like a sleeve or a gastric bypass or a duodenal switch that creates this change in your upper GI tract, for some reason that will reset where your brain believes your adipose stores need to be. You will go to sleep weighing this much. You will wake up weighing this much. But now your brain says, wait a minute, this is abnormal. You're supposed to have this much adipose tissue. You will then go into this hypermetabolic phase for about a year to two, depending on the patient, where your metabolism is through the roof. You're burning off all these excess calories, even when you're resting. Your hunger hormones go really, really quiet. That whole process will last until your brain decides you're at your new baseline. And where is that? It's generally a combination of fat tissue, muscle, bone, skin, blood, everything else that's going to give you a body mass index somewhere in the 20s. We know that because once your BMI gets above 30, your mortality goes up, it drops below 19, your mortality goes up. So the human body wants to be somewhere in the 20s. So that's why that's generally our goal for patients. People say, well, how much weight should I lose? How much weight will I lose? We don't know. There's no crystal ball there. But generally, if you're doing the program right, you're following up appropriately, you're eating appropriately, no matter how fast or slow your weight loss starts, following bariatric surgery, you should end up with a BMI hopefully somewhere in the 20s.